What you're about to see is rare footage taken during an actual diving emergency. It was captured in real time by a remote operated vehicle, or ROV, that was being used by the police. Now, the incident happened in a flooded quarry and very nearly resulted in the death of a Sky News underwater cameraman from carbon dioxide poisoning.
Kevin Capon was diving on a closed-circuit rebreather unit similar to this one. Following incorrect instruction received during training, Kevin used a widely practiced but fatally flawed technique for preparing the rebreather. It nearly cost him his life. Together with the police, the Sky News dive team and I featured an ROV that can locate bodies of murder victims dumped in water. The device gathers vital evidence prior to police divers approaching the scene. Amongst other onboard detection devices, the ROV is equipped with a video camera. After about an hour into the filming, it became apparent to me and the safety diver that something was bothering Kevin. We noticed that he was unusually agitated and was struggling to control his camera. He even collided with the ROV.
I realised that things were wrong, but not to the point that I knew that it was life-threatening. Having held onto the boat, I obviously realised that my breathing rate was now going through the roof, and I was feeling particularly uncomfortable, and in all honesty, that was the point where I probably felt that I don't want to be in this situation anymore. And the first thought, my initial first thought, was I need to get out of here.
If we look at Kevin, he swims over to the boat and he hangs on, trying to get a grip of the situation, and he's obviously concerned and agitated. He then bails out and he goes on to open circuit. You'll notice that his ventilation rate is extremely high. We would estimate somewhere between 150 and 200 litres a minute initially, 46 breaths a minute, and that's really going some. And while all of this is going on, there seems to be no urgency with the rest of the dive team. And they're looking to Kevin, who is the most experienced diver, for guidance, and in reality, he's compromised at that boat. His blood level has got a high CO2 level. He's probably having difficulty thinking about what he's doing, and although he does respond to signals, he responds to the signals slowly.
Kevin is completely unaware of what is happening. A buildup of carbon dioxide in the breathing loop is slowly killing him. To understand exactly what went wrong, let's first look at how a rebreather should operate when working properly. When the diver exhales, the gas contains decreased levels of oxygen and increased levels of carbon dioxide. It passes along a tube to the base of a canister containing granules of calcium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide that scrubs the CO2 from the breathing loop. Once the CO2 has been removed, the air is then analyzed by oxygen sensors and the metabolized O2 replaced. The reoxygenated gas is then breathed by the diver. Back at the flooded quarry, and Kevin is in trouble because the chemical scrubber has failed to remove the carbon dioxide from the breathing loop.
In this instance, we did a lot of investigation after the incident and found that the divers had been incorrectly taught how to fill the scrubber. They were tipping out the material, breaking up the lumps, and then tipping it all back in. And what that does, that mixes up the material. So instead of having a layer of used material in the scrubber and then behind that a layer of unused material, what you end up with is it all mixed up, and so the CO2 can just track straight through.
The fresh supply of chemical is capable of removing the carbon dioxide from the exhaled gas. In this case, however, what the diver had done was, instead of filling the rebreather with a new supply of chemical, he had reused the supply from a previous dive, and therefore it no longer had the capability of removing carbon dioxide from his exhaled gas and just allowed it to pass through and back into his breathing mixture.
The trouble was, Kevin and the rest of us on Sky News dive team were taught this practice on the rebreather course. A subsequent investigation by the Health and Safety Executive revealed that the practice of mixing up reused scrubber material with good material was commonplace.
I was absolutely amazed to find out how many divers, when I started to make inquiries, repacked a partially used canister. When a canister is used, it's either emptied or left intact, but it should never be repacked. Part of it goes from old military myths where you could take your material out and dry it on a poncho and then put it back together and do another dive. The reality is that's not the case, especially with the new scrubber materials that are in use today. Once the bed is disturbed, it should be disposed of and fresh material put in. People clearly don't understand the significance of how the canister works and the implications of disturbing the bed before a dive.
Throughout the entire incident, Kevin strongly believed that he was still in control of all of his faculties. To fully demonstrate exactly what was happening to him, we'll use several graphic indicators. They represent the level of CO2 in his blood, the level of consciousness, and the quantity of breathing gas remaining in his 3-litre bailout cylinder.
I always felt that I was in control of the situation. After having bailed out onto open circuit, I realised that we needed to get to the surface. And I do believe, and I still believe now, that we did it in a controlled manner and that I was able to control the ascent accordingly. But, as you say, the experts who have looked at it would say otherwise.
Gradually, he perceives through the clouds of his mind that what he has to do is get off the rebreather and on to open circuit, normal scuba, which he's carrying for the emergency. However, the carbon dioxide is still in his bloodstream and still clouding his thought processes. So he stays there and stays there. And his team around him don't understand what's going on, and they are watching him. What's happening now is that he's breathing very quickly. He's using up a very limited supply of gas, and he's going to use it up very quickly. As he ascends, in the end, you see that he runs out of gas.
As the CO2 enters Kevin's blood supply, his level of consciousness keeps falling.